I could feel my chest tightening as the elevator doors slid open. There she was, Jungkook's mother, standing there like she owned every inch of the room, calm, composed, arms crossed. The kind of woman who didn't bother to hide what she thought about anyone. And right now, I was the target. I didn't think I'd be this nervous, I whispered to myself, my fingers twitching despite my efforts to keep them still. Jungkook's hand brushed against mine, and I felt a moment of grounding. Do you want to wait? He asked softly, though there was firmness in his tone, a quiet authority that reminded me he knew me better than anyone. We can turn back. I shook my head, forcing a steadying breath. No, if I wait, I'll run. Those words felt heavier than I expected. Years of avoiding moments like this, hiding my emotions, pretending nothing mattered, it all seemed to surface at once. The hallway was eerily silent, almost theatrical. Each step felt like a drumbeat echoing in my skull. Mrs. Jian didn't smile. She didn't gesture. She just stood there, arms crossed, eyes sharp, studying me. I lowered my head instinctively, feeling exposed in a way I'd never felt before. You must be Taehyung, she said, voice calm, precise, unreadable. Yes, ma'am, I replied, barely daring to lift my gaze. Lift your head, she commanded. I obeyed slowly, my heart hammering so loud I wondered if she could hear it. As she stepped closer, the subtle scent of chamomile and soap filled my senses. Her eyes were not cold, but not warm either. They were studying me. I've seen the videos. I imagine she was thinking. The airport incident, the behind the scenes tension, the moments where Jungkook and I almost broke in front of everyone. I shivered, unsure which ones she meant. I know you've made mistakes, I heard myself say aloud, the words feeling both vulnerable and necessary. There was a pause, a long, quiet pause that felt like judgment. Then, unexpectedly, she turned and gestured. Follow me. No further words, just movement. Jungkook glanced at me, a mix of apology and trust in his eyes. I swallowed and followed her into the hotel suite. Inside, the lights were soft, almost forgiving. On the table lay a plate of fruit, tea, and photographs of Jungkook as a child. One drawing caught my eye, a messy crayon family portrait, smiling figures, innocent and perfect in its simplicity. Mrs. Jian motioned to the chair across from her. I sat, careful not to make a sound. Do you love my son? She asked suddenly. The words hit like a lightning strike, raw and unyielding. My mouth opened, closed, silence. Yes, I said at last, and it felt like confessing to something sacred. And what does that mean to you? She asked, her voice steady as if testing the very foundation of my soul. I wanted to say everything the way I'd protect him even when he wasn't looking. The fear of never being enough. The way I showed up every day despite it all. It means I respect him even when he scares me. It means I'll never stop trying. It means I love him in a way that isn't always easy, but it's real. She nodded once, slow, almost imperceptibly. I've heard many people say they love him, she said. Stylists, fans, managers. They say it when they want something, but very few have ever looked at him the way you just did. Like you're scared but willing. She slid a photo toward me. I froze. It was Jungkook and me backstage, unaware of the camera. I was wiping something off his cheek. Maybe makeup, maybe a tear, and he was smiling, oblivious to the world. I kept this, she said softly, because I needed to see for myself if he was safe. Something inside me loosened. My chest, my shoulders, the tension I hadn't realized I was holding shifted just enough that I could breathe again. You've got a weight to carry, she continued, her eyes meeting mine now with a faint glimmer of approval. Do you believe you are strong enough for the weight of his heart? I nodded, eyes burning. I'll never stop learning how. I'll never give up on him. A slow smile finally crossed her face. I believe you, she said. The trembling didn't leave me. It changed. It wasn't fear anymore. It was reverence. I had stepped into something sacred. I had been seen, and somehow I had been enough. Jungkook stood silently by the doorway, watching. His hand brushed my back. She's the hardest to win over, he whispered, and she just gave you the photo. I looked at it again. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I needed to explain myself. I had been tested, I had passed, and I had been seen. The walk back to the hotel lobby felt surreal. Every step with Jungkook beside me was heavy with unspoken words. I wanted to say something, anything, but the right words seemed to evaporate the moment they left my lips. I think she likes you, Jungkook said finally, a teasing edge in his voice that I could barely hear over the thrum of my racing heart. I scoffed nervously. Likes me? She looked like she was ready to bench press me the second I walked in. He laughed softly, but there was warmth in it, a quiet reassurance that I clung to like a lifeline. You handled it well. You were honest. That's what matters. Honest. It sounded so simple when he said it, but inside I was a storm of tension, doubt, and relief. I had been scrutinized, tested, measured, and still I wasn't crushed under the weight. Not completely. Back in our suite, I sank into the couch, staring out the window at the city lights. Jungkook poured 2 glasses of water and handed one to me. His hand lingered slightly, brushing mine, and I felt a jolt of electricity that had nothing to do with caffeine. You know, he said, sitting beside me, my mom isn't easy on anyone. I nodded, swirling the water in my glass absent-mindedly. Yeah, I know now. He leaned back, studying me like he always did, eyes searching mine for signs of cracks. But you're different. Different. I wanted to believe him, but the weight of everything expectations, fame, judgment was still there. I hope she doesn't think I'm faking it, I admitted quietly. Jungkook smiled faintly. She doesn't. You don't fake love. You don't hide it either. She knows it now. And yet, even as he reassured me, a flicker of doubt remained. The next day, our phones blew up with notifications, news articles, fan tweets, speculation. A private meeting with Jungkook's mom had somehow turned into a viral storm overnight. Headlines like Taehyung meets Jungkook's mom awkward or adorable and VBTS under pressure to impress swirled across the internet. I froze as I scrolled through. Some comments were sweet, supportive, almost protective, but others harsh. Critical, judgmental. Is he good enough? They asked. Will he break her heart? Every negative comment felt like another weight pressing down on my chest. Jungkook sat beside me, phone in hand, scrolling too. Ignore them, he said softly, though I could hear the strain in his voice. They don't matter. But they did. Not because they were true, but because of the voices I'd carried inside me for years. The fear of disappointing, of being inadequate, of failing the people I loved most. I had faced millions before, fans, cameras, reporters, but this was personal. This was his family. That night, sleep eluded me. I replayed the conversation with Mrs. Jian in my head, analyzing every word, every glance. Was I too formal? Too casual? Did I show enough emotion? Did I reveal too much? Too little? Jungkook must have sensed my unrest because he wrapped his arm around me. You did great, he murmured into my hair. Better than you think. I wanted to believe him. I tried, but the truth is, every time I close my eyes, I see her sharp gaze, her measured steps, the subtle nod of acknowledgement, and I can't help but feel the gravity of it all. I had survived, but surviving was only the beginning. The next morning brought more challenges. Schedule after schedule, interviews, rehearsals, photo shoots, all under the looming shadow of yesterday's meeting. Every camera lens seemed to search for cracks, for weakness. Every reporter wanted a soundbite, a scandal, a hint of drama, and yet, beneath it all, there was Jungkook patient, steady, unwavering. In between rehearsals, he would grab my hand, whisper, "We're fine, you're fine." But was I? I wonder how I could navigate the world outside our private moments, where every expression, every gesture, every interaction was dissected, judged, and spread across screens worldwide. By the evening, the tension had built to a breaking point. A minor mishap during a rehearsal, a forgotten lyric, a misplaced note triggered a cascade of anxiety in me I hadn't expected. My hands shook, my heart raced, and for a moment I considered just walking away. Jungkook noticed immediately. "Hey," he said, grabbing both my hands. "Look at me. You're not alone. We face it together, okay?" I nodded, letting his reassurance anchor me. But even as we returned to practice, I knew the real challenge wasn't performing on stage. It was facing the world outside criticism, scrutiny, and expectations, and knowing that this time it wasn't just me who mattered, because now it was about Jungkook, his family, and proving, not just to them but to myself, that love could withstand judgment, that honesty and vulnerability weren't weaknesses, and that sometimes surviving the moment was just the first step toward truly living it. The next morning felt heavier than the last. The city outside the window seemed oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. I tried to shake off the lingering tension from meeting Jungkook's mom, but the minute I checked my phone, I knew it was futile. Notifications flooded in, fan theories, paparazzi shots, article headlines screaming about Taehyung's awkward encounter with Jungkook's family and BTS star under pressure. Will he survive the family test? Even some clips from our rehearsal had been stitched into compilations, edited with captions that made my nervous stumbles look like a meltdown. I swallowed hard, the taste of anxiety bitter on my tongue. It wasn't just the public, it was internal too. Every word, every glance, every small misstep replayed in my mind with exaggerated intensity. Jungkook tried to lighten the mood, cracking jokes about my supposed formal bowing skills. But I could barely muster a smile. "Come on, Tai," he said gently. sliding a bottle of water toward me. You survived yesterday. You really did. I know I started, then hesitated, but surviving doesn't feel like enough. Not for her, not for you, not for me. He took my hand in his, gripping it with quiet firmness. It's not about perfection. You don't have to prove anything. Mom saw the real you, she saw us. But the images online suggested otherwise. Comments dissected my every move, questioning my sincerity, my intentions, my readiness. Some were supportive, sure, but the critical ones cut deeper than I expected. By mid afternoon, my anxiety turned to irritability. A routine photoshoot became a test of endurance. The cameras flashed endlessly, each click echoing like a judgment. Every smile felt forced, every movement calculated. I was performing for the world, but inside I felt hollow. During a brief break, I slipped away to a quiet corner of the studio, heart hammering, palms clammy. Jungkook found me there a few minutes later, concern etched across his face. You're letting it get to you, he said softly, standing a step away but still within reach. These people don't define you. I do, and my mom does, in her way. That's all that matters. I know you're right, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. But it's hard to ignore everything else. I can handle the stage, the interviews, the cameras, but family, her, that was different. He stepped closer, brushing a stray strand of hair from my forehead. You weren't just meeting her, you were meeting a part of me. That's always going to be important. And you handled it with more grace than you realize. I wanted to believe him. I really did. But the knot in my stomach refused to loosen. That night, alone in the quiet of the hotel room, while Jungkook was catching up with his schedule, I scrolled through fan comments again. Each one felt like a tiny needle, pricking my confidence, amplifying the doubts I'd been carrying silently. And then a message popped up from an unexpected source, a friend of Jungkook's mom. The text was brief but heavy. She wants to see you again. She was impressed, but she's not convinced yet. Are you ready? I froze. Ready? I didn't feel ready. My mind reeled through every possible scenario. Another formal dinner, more questions about the future, judgments about my character, my intentions, my worthiness. The pressure was suffocating. I called Jungkook immediately. She wants to see me again, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He chuckled softly, though I could sense his underlying tension. I told you, she saw the real you. Now she just wants to know more. You don't have to be perfect, Tai. Just be yourself. But what if myself wasn't enough? What if my nervousness, my awkward pauses, my insecurities, they overshadowed everything else? I had faced audiences of thousands before, cameras and lights blazing, and yet nothing felt as exposing as this. Sleep came fitfully that night, haunted by imagined conversations, critical gazes, and the heavy weight of expectation. And as the dawn broke, I knew the next meeting would test me in ways I couldn't yet predict. It wasn't just about approval, it was about trust, vulnerability, and proving that love could survive scrutiny, judgment, and the eyes of the world. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath, trying to steady my racing thoughts. Tomorrow, I would face her again. And this time, there would be no hiding, no escape, no safety net, just me, Jungkook, and the truth of our connection. The day of the second meeting arrived with an air of inevitability, as if the world itself was holding its breath. I woke early, my chest tight with anticipation, mind racing through every possible scenario. Every detail of the previous encounter replayed in my head: the polite smiles, the subtle glances, the way Jungkook's mom had tilted her head, studying me like a painting, weighing every movement. I stared at my reflection in the mirror for what felt like an eternity, adjusting my collar, brushing through my hair, trying to summon a confidence I didn't quite feel. My heart thudded like a drum in my chest, a relentless reminder that this wasn't just another public appearance. This was personal. This was about family, about love, about the delicate bridge between my world and Jungkook's. When we arrived, the atmosphere was calm yet tense, filled with the quiet expectation of an audience waiting for the next act. Jungkook squeezed my hand reassuringly. "You've got this, Tai. Just be you." I nodded, trying to absorb the calm in his words, but every step toward the door felt like walking on a tightrope stretched over a canyon. One wrong move, one awkward pause, and it could all unravel. His mom greeted us with a warm smile, yet her eyes were sharp, observing, weighing. The living room was cozy, decorated with soft lights, family photos, and a subtle scent of jasmine. It should have been comforting, but instead, it amplified my nerves. We sat, small talk commenced, and I found myself fumbling over my words, overthinking every sentence. Jungkook's mom asked about my family, my childhood, my dreams. I answered honestly, but each response felt like it was under a microscope, each pause amplified in my mind. "You seem nervous," she said gently, yet with a piercing quality that made my stomach twist. Meeting family can be daunting, but it's honest nerves that show your sincerity. You don't have to pretend. I exhaled, realizing she wasn't trying to judge me harshly. She was observing, understanding, looking for truth in my reactions. Slowly, I began to relax, letting myself laugh at my own awkward jokes, allowing the conversation to flow more naturally. Jungkook chimed in occasionally, teasing me lightly, and his mother's smile softened. There were moments when I glimpsed the warmth and acceptance behind her measured words, moments that made the weight on my shoulders feel a little lighter. Then came the questions that mattered most about our relationship, our future, how we would support each other through challenges. These were no longer casual inquiries. They were probing, searching for reassurance. My chest tightened again, but I spoke from the heart, sharing my love for Jungkook, my commitment to our journey together, my willingness to learn, grow, and be the partner he deserved. Time seemed suspended. Every word, every glance, every small gesture carried significance. And then a quiet moment, a pause in the conversation, when I realized her gaze had softened completely. It wasn't judgment anymore. It was recognition, acknowledgement. She had seen my truth, and for the first time, I felt the weight of anxiety lift slightly. Jungkook reached over and held my hand under the table, giving me a reassuring squeeze. The warmth of his touch steadied me, reminding me why I was here, what mattered most. And in that moment, I felt a connection, not just with him, but with the family I had feared would be an insurmountable challenge. By the end of the meeting, there was laughter, shared stories, and a sense of ease that I hadn't expected to feel. The tension that had haunted me for days dissolved, replaced by a quiet certainty. I had faced my fear, confronted my insecurities, and come out the other side with not just acceptance but understanding. Walking away, I felt lighter, more grounded. The cameras and public opinions would always be there, a constant backdrop to our lives. But this moment, this private victory was mine. Jungkook and I had crossed another threshold, bridging worlds with honesty, courage, and love. And as we stepped outside, I realized that meeting his mom wasn't the test I had feared. It was the beginning of a deeper, more authentic connection, one that would shape not just our relationship, but the very way I understood commitment, trust, and family. The drive home was quiet, filled with the comfortable silence that contrasted sharply with the tension of the meeting. Jungkook hummed softly to himself, and I found myself stealing glances at him, letting the warmth of our connection settle in my chest. I realized that I had been carrying the weight of expectation not just from him or his family, but from myself. And now, for the first time in days, I felt the release of that pressure. Once we got back to our shared apartment, I leaned back on the couch, closing my eyes. The world outside continued as always, flashing cameras, rumors spreading faster than wildfire, but inside there was a bubble of calm. Jungkook flopped beside me, letting out a laugh. See, I told you it wasn't so bad. I smiled, but it was more than just a smile. It was relief, pride, and a subtle awe at the journey we were on together. Meeting his mom had been daunting, terrifying even, but it had forced me to confront parts of myself I usually kept hidden. I had always been wary of judgment, hyper aware of how others perceived me. But sitting there, speaking openly, laughing awkwardly, being entirely myself, it had shown me that vulnerability wasn't weakness. Jungkook rested his head on my shoulder, and I felt the steady rise and fall of his breathing. You did great, he whispered. Really? I could tell she saw it too. I let out a soft laugh, shaking my head. I don't know if I did. I kept messing up my words, and I was sweating like crazy. He chuckled, nudging me gently. You were nervous? That's human, but you were honest, Tai. That's what mattered. I thought about her words, how she had said that sincerity shines through nerves. Her gaze, initially so discerning, had softened once she saw who I truly was. It wasn't perfection she sought, it was truth. And in that truth, I found a small, invaluable victory. As evening fell, I began reflecting on the larger picture. Public life had a way of magnifying every insecurity, twisting it into a spectacle. But moments like this quiet, intimate, human reminded me why I kept choosing this life. Not for the accolades or the spotlight, but for the people I cared about, the relationships that grounded me, the love that persisted despite the noise. Messages and notifications began to pile up on my phone, fans speculating, headlines spinning wild theories, but I didn't touch them. For the first time in a long time, I didn't need external validation. I had faced a personal challenge, navigated it honestly, and emerged more confident in my own skin. Jungkook broke the silence again. You know, she really liked you. I blinked, surprised by the certainty in his tone. Really? He nodded. Yeah, she told me after you left, said you were genuine, and that she could see how happy we make each other. That means a lot, Tae. Hearing that, I felt a warmth spread through me. Approval was never my goal, but acknowledgement from someone who mattered to him, it carried weight I couldn't ignore. It wasn't about impressing her, it was about showing up fully, honestly, and letting that authenticity speak for itself. The night grew deeper, the city outside quieting down. I sat there, holding Jungkook's hand, feeling the steady rhythm of our lives intertwined. The world would always throw challenges at us, test us in ways big and small, but I had learned something essential that day. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's showing up, even when fear is present. And as I looked at Jungkook, smiling softly in the dim light, I knew that no matter what came next, we had taken a meaningful step forward, not just as a couple navigating the scrutiny of fame, but as two people learning to trust each other, trust ourselves, and embrace the messy, beautiful complexity of love. Even amidst the chaos of public life, the flash of cameras, the weight of rumors and expectations, there was this, a quiet, unshakable certainty that some moments, some victories are ours alone. And this one, meeting his mom, navigating fear, finding connection, was one I would carry with me forever. The next morning, the city was alive again, buzzing with energy. But inside, I felt a strange mix of calm and apprehension. After meeting Jungkook's mom, I had expected everything to settle, but reality had a way of sneaking up on you, especially when you live a life constantly in the spotlight. Notifications flooded my phone. Headlines, fan tweets, gossip posts. Everyone had an opinion, everyone wanted a piece of our private life. I took a deep breath and tried to focus on what mattered, the quiet moments, the real ones, away from the chaos. I turned to Jungkook, who was scrolling lazily on his own phone, his expression a mix of amusement and exasperation. "You should have seen the headlines this morning," he said, smirking. "They made it sound like a war zone. I think they even described my mom as formidable and you as overwhelmed." I groaned, running a hand through my hair. Overwhelmed? That's putting it mildly. I thought I was just being polite and nervous, not dramatic enough for a front page story. He laughed, shaking his head. "You are perfect, Tae. Don't let them twist it into something it's not." But even as I tried to shrug it off, a knot of anxiety lingered. Public life had taught me one thing. Perception often matters more than reality. I worried, what if my awkwardness overshadowed my sincerity? What if the media and fans misread my intentions? But then I reminded myself of what his mom had said. Sincerity shines through nerves. That truth wasn't just for her, it was a shield against the storm outside. Determined to reclaim my sense of self, I focused on the small, grounding rituals, brewing my coffee just the way I liked it, playing a song on the piano, texting close friends who always reminded me that not everything needed to be perfect. Jungkook joined me at the piano, and we played a soft, improvised melody, laughter filling the room. In those notes, in that shared silence, I felt the reassurance I needed. Life outside could be unpredictable, chaotic, but this connection, this moment, it was ours. Later, as we prepared to leave for our schedule, the media frenzy loomed again. Flashing cameras, eager reporters, and the relentless scrutiny of social media reminded me that fame is a double-edged sword. Jungkook squeezed my hand gently before we stepped out, grounding me. You're doing great, Tae. Just be yourself. I nodded, repeating it like a mantra. Just be myself. Stepping into the crowd, I felt the familiar rush of adrenaline, but this time it was tempered by confidence. I knew who I was, what I represented, and why I was here, not just as a performer, but as someone who loved and was loved. Meeting his mom had been more than a challenge. It was a lesson in resilience, authenticity, and the importance of facing fear head on. Throughout the day, reporters asked the inevitable questions about the meeting. I smiled politely, deflected with humor, and stayed honest without oversharing. Jungkook stayed close, his presence a constant anchor. By evening, when the cameras and lights dimmed, I felt exhausted but satisfied. I had faced a personal trial, balanced public expectation, and emerged intact. Later, alone with Jungkook in the quiet of our hotel room, I let myself exhale fully. You know, I began. I thought I would crumble when I met your mom, but I survived, and it wasn't so bad actually. He laughed softly, brushing a strand of hair from my face. Told you, you're stronger than you think. And besides, she loves you now. Well, as much as a mom can love someone who's dating her son. I smile, the warmth in his words spreading through me. I realized then that life, fame, family, everything was a balancing act. Meeting his mom had been a test, but more than that, it was a reminder courage, honesty, and love matter far more than perfection or public opinion. And in this chaotic world, those truths were worth holding on to. As I lay back on the bed, looking at Jungkook's relaxed face, I felt a sense of quiet triumph. Life would keep testing us, keep challenging us, but for now, we had won a small, meaningful victory. The media could spin their stories, fans could speculate endlessly, but the truth, our truth, remained untouched. Ours alone. And in that moment, I understood something essential love, authenticity, and courage. Those were the victories that truly mattered. Everything else was noise. The next few days were a whirlwind. Between rehearsals, interviews, and public appearances, there was barely a moment to breathe, but my mind kept circling back to that meeting with Jungkook's mom. Everyone had expectations for me, from the public to the staff, even to Jungkook himself in subtle ways. I had to navigate it all carefully, keeping my composure while staying true to who I was. On one of those busy mornings, I found myself alone in the practice room, the sunlight spilling through the tall windows. The faint echo of our music lingered, and I let my fingers drift over the keys absent-mindedly. I thought about the way she had looked at me, not with judgment, but with that quiet, assessing gaze that seemed to weigh every word and gesture. It had unnerved me at first, but now I saw it differently. She was protective of Jungkook, yes, but she wasn't impossible. She had standards, just like any parent would. The phone buzzed, dragging me out of my thoughts. A string of notifications from social media, fans analyzing every little thing, news sites publishing speculative headlines, comments pouring in about our family drama. I stared at it for a moment, the familiar pang of anxiety rising, then let out a soft sigh. I realized something important. I couldn't control how people perceived me. All I could control was how I carried myself, how I treated those I loved, and how I chose to react. Jungkook arrived soon after, a small smile on his face, sensing my mood. Hey, he said, dropping into the chair beside me. You've been quiet all morning. Thinking too much? Yeah, I admit it. About your mom, about everything. He nodded knowingly. Look, Tai, meeting my mom isn't a one time test. She's going to observe, she's going to ask questions, and yeah, sometimes it might feel intense. But don't let it get to you. You've already impressed her more than you know. His words were comforting, but I also knew that admiration alone didn't erase the pressure. Every word, every gesture, every expression was under scrutiny. The cameras weren't the problem, they were part of the world I chose. But it was the constant, invisible gaze of expectation that weighed the most. Later that evening, we had an unexpected visit from her. Jungkook's mom stood at the doorway, holding a small gift in her hands. There was no sternness this time, only a gentle warmth that made my chest tighten with nerves and anticipation. I thought you might like this, she said softly, handing me a simple hand-knitted scarf for the cold evenings, and as a small gesture, I accepted it carefully, touched more than I expected. It wasn't about the gift itself, but the intention, the recognition that despite everything, I had earned a place in her world. I looked up at her, trying to find the right words. Thank you. Truly, it means a lot.